Okay, welcome to the Freshwater Real Estate Podcast with me, Kelly J. Clark. Sitting in for Porter today, we have Brian Cotant from Falcon Builders. Brian, welcome, and why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, where are you from, etc.
All right, so from Grand Rapids, that's where our headquarters is for Falcon Custom Homes, and we also have an office in Petoskey and an office here at the Centerpoint Marina in Traverse City. I've been in the industry for 28 years. And
I was just going to ask, how many years of experience do you have here in building?
Yep, so 28 years, and I've been with multiple high-end builders in my career and landed with Falcon Homes a few years ago. I've always followed the brand and basically the way they operate and their systems, their processes have always, kind of been unique.
Sure.
Compared to the other builders I've seen in the industry.
Well, and I've seen some of those builds are, pretty spectacular.
Absolutely. So, I wanted to, basically, the end of my career, which I've got another 15, 20 years yet, but I wanted to make sure.
You're going to be working forever.
Yeah. But I just wanted to make sure that I was representing the right brand, at the, toward the end of my chapter, middle to the end of my chapter. So, we're in northern Michigan a lot now, probably the majority of our business, because we want to focus on water.
Sure.
And obviously northern Michigan has the most pristine, beautiful freshwater properties in the world. So that's why we're here and well planted. And
that's that sentiment is echoed. I have a lot of clients over the past, I would say 8 years or so, coming from out west, coming from California, coming from Colorado, etc. Californians in particular are very well versed on climate change, and they all say the same thing. Hey, we've looked at the climate change models. Yeah. This is the place to be over the next 100 years. 20% of the world's fresh water. And as we all know, that's only going to become more and more valuable over time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And crucial over time. So,
yeah.
What are some things you do to keep up with, up to date with best building practices and products and things like that?
Yeah. Well, what's unique is I mentioned before, I've been with multiple builders in my career. I've got a full-time position doing just that, making sure that we are on top of the innovation, whether it's product or the application or installation of the product. And I'm looking at stuff globally, whether it's the materials that we're using for the structure. One example I'll give you is NA Structures out of Quebec, Canada. That's where we get the majority of our steel and our lumber.
Okay.
And they do BIM modeling.
Are we seeing any impact with the tariffs on that yet?
Actually, believe it or not yet. Okay. A little bit, but because they're assembling a whole home for us, because it's a panelized system that's been pre-engineered, and it's been BIM modeled to make sure the mechanicals all work within the structure before we get into the field and start assembling and running into those issues.
Okay.
So that's one thing that we do that we've adopted. Instead of doing the same thing over and over again, finding out in the field there's something wrong, we do all the BIM modeling with our mechanicals through NA Structures so that their structure, the steel, all the penetrations through the steel are in the right, positions for everything to come through, gas lines, HVAC, whatever that might be. But because they're assembling a whole package for us, rather than just sending us parts and pieces, it kind of avoids the tariff taxes that we're getting.
Ah, nice. Okay.
So it's interesting how it's
when
all
you're
working.
Mentioning steel, I think a lot of people immediately think modern build, modern structures. Is that primarily the focus of Falcon, or do you guys have different options?
Oh, we have different options, especially now with engineered timber. We can avoid steel altogether now. They're doing skyscrapers now out of timber over in Germany. So that's becoming definitely innovative. And anytime we can use wood versus steel, we like that because of the condensation issues and the assembly of the steel. Not everybody can do that. Carpenters hate dealing with steel. We're blessed to have a few on our team that do well with steel, welding, and wood, all within their umbrella, their company. So we're gifted there as far as having that talent. But I wanted to go back to, just the uniqueness of Falcon, though, and the innovation side of it is like I've never heard or seen any other building company that has a guy that works full-time just seeking out innovation and better strategy, better talent to bring to the team to execute a better build and process for the whole team.
Well, as somebody, and I'm sure I'm going to talk on Porter's behalf here, as a water dog, for me, and for him, a litmus test for a builder, like how do you deal with water? And, do you have a water management plan? what are some things you take into consideration? Because, we get a fair amount of rain here and things like that. So what do you take into consideration there?
Absolutely everything for Michigan. So there's a lot of great products out there, and it actually depends on the exterior materials that's going to go on there, whether it's siding or stone or metal. And we have 2 consultants that we work with just for that. And part of it's the energy consultant side of it, but it's also the membrane on the home on what we're going to do, what application, and why. And that's driven by the exterior finishes too. So it's collaborating with the mason if they're involved, or the sider, that's installing the material and what membranes they're using, along with our energy consultant, because it's not just the rainwater, it's condensation too, with the ebb and flow of our temperature changes.
Sure.
From hot summer day, it could be 90 degrees and then drop down to 50, 60 degrees at night sometimes.
Yep.
We have a big fluctuation.
Yeah, you'll see 40-degree swings in a day here occasionally.
Exactly. So we look at not just the precipitation factor of moisture and water, but also condensation, especially if there's a lot of steel in the structure too, or glass. Glass is a big one. So then you bring your HVAC guy in as well. So there's a lot of damage that happens long term within the walls based on condensation, not just leaking. So we're very scared of water. So we play a big game in our offense on how do we avoid it.
Welcome to Northern Michigan, where you can get all 4 seasons in one day.
Exactly.
So are you the one actually responsible on site, or are there project managers that you have? Or
Yep. So we're a team of 5, which is absolutely amazing what we can pull off, and it's because of the talent that we've surrounded ourselves with, which is the subcontractors, suppliers, consultants. But so how we're structured is we have 5 people. It's Nathan Abbott, Marcus, Caleb, Carrie, and myself. And so basically there's 4 sets of eyes on site weekly, between myself, Nate, Caleb, and Marcus. So it's not just, that's the other unique thing about us, is not when a client calls the builder, they're typically going to get the interview, see if it's the right fit, get hired on, and then they're handed off to a project manager. What I don't like about that recipe is every builder has a brand, but that brand's not executed and the experience isn't the same and consistent depending on who you get assigned to, as far as a project manager. It could be a project manager that's very green and doesn't have a lot of experience, and doesn't really care. They're just trading their time for money and getting their check. It could be the green guy that wants to learn, so he's diving in and really dissecting that job site all the time on behalf of the client and the build, which is great to have a guy like that.
Sure.
But he might miss things that he doesn't even know he's missing. And then you've got your seasoned guys that I've done this for 30, 40 years. I'm burned out. I just don't care anymore. So now you've got that, for an experience. Or you got the seasoned guy that really does care, he's passionate, and that's the key person. But it's a pretty small chance that you're going to get assigned that guy every time with whatever builder you're working with in the state of Michigan. What I like about us is you get the green guy, you get the middle guy, you get the 2 seasoned guys, Nathan and myself, and every week that job's getting combed over by our whole team. So it's more of a team approach. It's not just Caleb here's a job, or Marcus here's a job, or Nate here's a job, or Brian here's a job. We all are working together to make sure the job's done well.
Yeah. So part of the problems we're having in Northern Michigan is staffing in a lot of different areas. Do you find that with crews? Do you have consistency in your crews? Do you find it difficult to find workers?
Absolutely not.
No.
So
What's the secret recipe then?
The secret recipe is, again, having that full-time position that I fill, which is me studying the market statewide, and waterfront is our focus, but it's also me identifying the talent statewide. So we have a lot of networking and resources that we've achieved over in the Oakland County area, the southeast state of Michigan, West Michigan obviously, because we've been in business for 28 years.
Right.
Northern Michigan now over the last 6 years, because we've been in Petoskey and Bay Harbor and now Traverse City surrounding area. So I can show my spreadsheets to a client, and I've got my East, West, and Northern Michigan team of suppliers and subcontractors of the best talent that I've vetted personally and had the one-on-one meetings, went on their job sites, vetted their work, making sure that they do what they say they're doing and they're qualified, basically. So I can assemble, and that's what we do, based on the scale of the home, the size of the home, the scale of the home, the style of the home, location, the budget. I tailor a team specific for that job and that client based on personalities, skill level, the size of their team, because I'm not going to put a 2-man framing crew on a 12,000 square foot home.
Right.
So we have the resources pulling from anywhere in the state of Michigan at a competitive price point even, because of the supply and demand.
Your price point. Let's talk about the price point here for a
Yeah.
second. How many starts a year do you typically do?
4 to 6.
4 to 6 starts a year. What would most builders?
Most of
I mean,
them.
I don't know.
Well, and that's the other thing. We are very intentional on our market, so we serve the affluent clientele.
Yeah. So,
So
you guys don't even start until what number?
$5 million on the house.
5 million on
For-
the house.
yes.
Like that's the starting point, and it goes up from there.
Correct.
Yeah.
And the difference is too is we're not doing the remodels, we're not doing the additions, we're
Right.
not doing the smaller scale homes. Most builders, and it's not to belittle any builder.
No, sure.
Everybody's got their own
It's
business
just
model.
this is a different,
We have
completely
a
different niche market.
Yeah, we have a specific market that we are ramped up for and have a lot of horsepower, and that's our intention. Where we're not going to tie up our capacity and resources on the smaller jobs or the additions or the remodels
Right.
or commercial work per se.
And it's funny, having grown up here and still have friends who, have lived there their whole life, or lived here their whole life.
Yeah.
And there are some people who don't understand or don't see the staggering amount of wealth that is coming into this area.
Yeah.
It can truly be shocking. It is amazing to me the amount of money that is coming into the Grand Traverse area region.
Absolutely.
So, do you have any? So, in terms of your educational background, any memberships? The HBA, things like that.
To be honest with you, our best time invested is into our resources and our process and our client and their projects. So you only have 24 hours in a day. So I used to get into a lot of that networking and all these clubs and
Sure.
meetings and stuff, but all that does is create busyness. I'm here to
Instead
serve
of
a
the
client at a
intentional
certain
focus.
level. Yeah, so it's like I don't have time to, and I'm a family man, so you got to balance the work life,
Yeah, for
time
sure.
too. So if you do everything, you're never going to master one thing. So we really like to try to focus on mastering what we're good at and say no a lot, to be
Gotcha.
honest with you. But
So, after 28 years in the industry, I'm sure I know the answer to this question. Have you been involved in any bankruptcies or litigations? And if so, how'd you handle that?
never a bankruptcy,
Okay.
and probably only two.
If you've been in business long, any business,
Yeah.
there's going to be some litigation.
Oh, for
involved.
sure.
If you,
Yeah.
anytime at all, you've been sued for something, right?
Yeah, so there's 2 litigations, and both sides we ended up, it was a neutral decision where we reached an agreement with the client and went our separate ways. So it's
Okay.
never been a huge issue.
I don't know that there's ever been a build that hasn't had a change order come in. Have you ever had one?
Oh, absolutely.
You've had a build that has not had a change
Oh,
order?
then not, yes, no, absolutely. No.
So, how do you handle
Yeah.
change orders? Is it a, what's the process? Is it a fixed
Yeah.
cost? Is it a price plus, cost plus?
Yep. So we have 2 contracts the client can choose from, and we have that right in our introduction meeting. It's the first page we talk about.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, it's just to let them know that you have 2 choices as far as how you want this agreement structured, and one has more risk and one has less, but you're going to have more, liability on one versus the other 2. So most of our contracts are cost plus. We still are doing the fixed cost, believe it or not, even with prices
Okay.
fluctuating all over the place. But how we handle the fixed cost is we're providing allowances for like plumbing fixtures, lighting fixtures, the items that the client's going to pick out.
Sure.
And we have a standard on that too. We're not going to allow you to go to Lowe's or Menards and those big box stores to pick out your fixtures because we're at a certain level.
Yep.
So we're typically designing and building a Ferrari type home. So our
Where
allowances.
you're not going to go pick up parts for a Ford.
No, right. So our allowances reflect what our standard is on behalf of the client and our portfolio on what we're representing as a product for our brand. So as long as they stay with those allowances that we give to the interior designer, we give to the client, and we give to the showroom representative that they're going to meet and to pick out all their selections. So everybody's on the same page at the beginning of the meeting, so we're not showing them a woof range when their price point is, might be a Sub-Zero or a Thermador, something different.
Okay. Well, and on that same line, then, how do you ensure staying within budget? how many of your projects
Yeah.
would you say stay within budget percentage wise?
Well,
Let's say you got 5 builds a year. So
Yep.
of the 5,
respectable within the budget is 10 to 15%.
fair enough.
And I would say half of them stay within that.
So 5 million. I mean, it's
$500,000.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's a little bit of a chunk.
Yep, but very respectable when you look at like $100,000 and it goes
Yeah.
to 110.
Sure.
It's 10 grand. I mean,
Yeah, it's all
So-
relative.
and again, when I'm interviewing a client, just like they're interviewing us before we go into contract, I share our process that we give you the allowance for all your fixtures, and we price out after your showroom visit. Once you've made your selections, that they're supposed to be reflecting our allowances, the representative at the showroom. As long as you stay with what they're showing you and you don't get off track, and if you do, that's fine. We're going to price it out
Right.
for you. You're going to know what the price difference is between the allowance and the reality and what you picked. Before we order it, you're signing off and you're writing a check for the change order. So they have that's what clients don't understand, is they have full power of their budget as long as they follow the builder's process and execute it. But when they're going to showroom to showroom to showroom and just picking everything that they love and they're not checking the price and they're not meeting with the builder.
Some people have that luxury.
Yeah, some people do that, and we get those too. But everybody typically has a budget. So as long as they read their allowances and know what that is going into their meeting, and they follow that, and if they don't, that's fine. We're going to do the change order on the difference. They have control whether it's a yes or no or to go back and reselect before they write the check and sign off and we order. We're never going to order it and bill them later. It's going to be paid now
Sure.
before we order, and they're going to sign off on it. So
Everybody has a budget.
Yeah,
If
so
you could talk
yeah.
to Mrs. Clark, that'd be awesome. I
yeah,
appreciate it.
yeah. So we put that onus back on the client though, and as long as they follow our process,
Yeah.
we can hit their budget 100% if we need to.
Okay. Can you give me an example of a specific problem on a past build?
Yeah.
And how'd you handle it? Like, what was the situation? What was the result? What's the process you went through to fix that?
So it depends if it's financial or, I guess, the execution of the build. So if there's an issue, and we don't run into a lot of this because we do the BIM modeling, but a lot of what I've experienced in my past, in my career, is the BIM modeling's not done and the pre-construction meeting is not done with all the mechanical guys that are doing the HVAC and the plumbing and the gas, electric, all that.
Kind of important.
Yeah, so if you don't meet at the front end, with a 1D, basically, 1D, 2D, piece of paper on the table
Yeah.
on addressing what could be the routes that we're taking to get from point A to point B for efficiency, for one, but also aesthetics. Because you can't just run anywhere, because you might mess up the aesthetics if you fall within the plane of a wall or a ceiling. Then bulkheads have to come into play and drywall, and it changes everything. So when you're not doing the BIM modeling and overlaying all of your mechanicals on CAD to understand where the routes are to make sure there's no conflicts, typically they're learning about that in the field. And then you're going backwards, because now you're like, well, what are we going to do here? And it's usually reframing and changing the architecture a little bit on the inside of the home and how that feels, which is never a good deal. So we like to do everything on paper through CAD to solve those issues. So we really don't get a lot of those issues because of that. But it's investing more time and money on the front end, on CAD, versus in the field when you have a problem.
And in-house you have an architect.
Not in-house, no.
So you work with architects that other people want to work with, and
Yeah.
with the
Well,
clients want to work
we have
with.
our preferred architects and preferred interior designers. That's because I do a lifestyle study on the client to qualify them to work together.
Mm-hmm.
So based on that lifestyle
What do
study,
you take into consideration for the lifestyle?
a lot. So it's, where do you currently live? At what level is that? I want to see inspiration photos. Are we downsizing? Are we upscaling? Are you designing this home long-term? Is it a long-term investment? Is it something you want to flip in 5 years? It's temporary, for the time being. Do you want this home to accommodate your whole family and the ebb and flow as your kids age and get kids and grandkids, holidays?
And in northern Michigan in particular, lifestyle. When I think lifestyle, we're
Yeah.
talking obviously water.
Right.
We're talking whether it's in the lake or on the big water.
Yeah.
We're talking golf. We're talking equestrian. We're talking wineries, etc. Right.
Yes. So there's a lot of factors to talk about that get missed if I'm not on the front end. And that's the reason I created the position I have today, is let's not miss these. Let's do a good interview on this client, do a lifestyle study is what we call it. Get to know them and why they're building this house, what their budget really is, because a lot of them will say a budget thinking that it might come less than that. So they try to be a little conservative on what they're willing to invest. I really push hard to get that real number out of them, because all you're doing is, for one, fooling yourself on what it's going to cost for what you really want. So it's understanding what their expectation is. But I push it out and tell them, it's like, you're handcuffing our talent and the quality of materials we're going to put in your house if you don't tell us your real budget. If you can tell me that, I can hit it 100% for you by assembling the right design team, having us work together on the front end of your project, collaborating, getting to know you as a client and the expectation and what your real budget is, because it is very easy to align budgets with that client's expectation, as long as you study the client, listen to them, ask the right questions, and then execute that as a team on paper.
Well, and it sounds like anything else in life. I mean, it's building a relationship. That's
Absolutely
the important part. And if you're able to do that, obviously it's going to be a better end product all the way around. And
Absolutely.
I find that in real estate as obviously as well as in construction. So,
Right.
Can you tell me about a home you built with a very difficult client? You don't have to name any names, of course, but
Sure.
What was the situation, and what did you do to make the client happy, and what was the end result?
So one particular client, fortunately, they have an abundance as far as their budget was. They went into the project thinking it was going to be a certain amount of money. It ended up being quite a bit more, but again, they were notified of every change, what the cost was, signed off on it, wrote the check every month. So, that's going back on them as it was your choice. We did what we were ordered to do by you as the client. So at the end of the day, they got one of the most beautiful homes in the state of Michigan and probably going to be recognized nationwide. The problem was too, he was retired. So and it was a summer home. So in the wintertime, they're out west and then here in the summertime. So they had another place not far from the building site, so they were on site every day, all day in the summer with the trades. The other mistake that was made, because we were brought in last, ironically, as the builder for the team, it was first the architect, interior designer, and they hired everybody independently. So it didn't go through the...
That does not sound very cohesive.
No, so it did not go through the escort that is, at the end, responsible for everybody.
Right.
So independently hired the architect, independently hired the interior designer, even the cabinetry, and the house is loaded with cabinetry, built-ins, wall coverings throughout the whole house, very custom high-end. That was hired independently.
Versus a one-stop shop.
Versus one-stop, yeah. Or even going through an interior designer or a build, yeah, and typically that would all go through the builder.
Right.
So we're managing it, but we don't get paid for it. So, because it was getting billed directly to the client. And there were several things on that home where independently the client went around and independently hired people to save money. Well, we still have to manage it. We're still liable for it. And at the end of the day, you got a beautiful home, but the experience for everybody was, I wouldn't say a train wreck, because we're really good at managing chaos if we have to, but we don't want to. But that's the situation we were given by the client. And at the end of the day, they got a beautiful home, and everybody loves the job, and Falcon's brand is very well respected because we got that particular job done in such a great time period and the quality. And everybody knew what we had to deal with that homeowner being on site every day, all day in the summer, interfering and hiring all these different
Right.
trades independently and professionals independently that we had to manage.
Okay.
So I think that actually spoke highly of us and strengthened us as a company.
Tell me about a time when you had to motivate an unwilling subcontractor or maybe an inspector or something to kind of go your way.
Motivate them?
Yeah. Do you not have these issues on the $5 million projects, or is this more of a...
As far as like getting them to show up on time and get their
I
scope
mean,
of
it
work done on time?
happens, I don't know if it happens at higher end builds
Yeah.
as much as, more average
Well,
cost builds, but...
If it's regarding cost, there really isn't an issue because we have, like I said, the endless amount of resources statewide that are qualified to work for Falcon. So I can replace anybody like that within a day. And we've done that before. So if it's an ongoing problem where we got to talk to them about the same exact thing 3 times, they're gone, and I'm not wasting any more time.
Learn to fire fast.
Yes,
Yeah.
and have the resources to step in. So we don't even miss a day, maybe 2, 48 hours, I can have another guy there instantly. And that's the other thing, having the documentation that we have organized, where you can do handoffs very easily and efficiently. It's having that capacity to have that documentation to hand off in case we do have to make a move.
Nice.
Because we don't like our jobs missing days, let alone weeks.
What's the worst failure you had as a builder after a client moved in, and how did you remedy it?
Oh, geez, I don't think we've had like anything crazy. Even in my career with multiple builders, there hasn't been anything. Honestly, there hasn't been anything that's not out of the norm as far as a crack in the drywall or a leak that popped up later. Or yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sure Porter would want me to ask, any cool dog-friendly features you've ever built, dog houses or watering stations or anything kind of out of the ordinary?
We haven't had a lot of crazy dog owners where they're willing to invest and I've seen a lot, but nothing that we've executed for a pet. I can't think of anything, even with everybody I've been with in my career.
What would you say is one of the coolest features you've ever built in a home?
Ooh.
Something unusual, something unique, something that nobody else has.
Oh, geez. I don't know. Everybody seems to want the same thing as far as the golf simulator and the spiral staircase and glass railings and oh, geez, the theaters, wine rooms, elevators. There's really nothing standing out crazy that we haven't done multiple times, unfortunately.
Any like hidden passageways or?
Yeah, but a lot of people do that now. I mean,
fair enough.
We did a large scale home where, they had the safe room with the $30,000, vault to get into it, and then this cabinet company is phenomenal too. But they did all the panelized wood wall over the top of everything, so it truly was a real safe room where
Totally
there's
seamless.
no way you're going to find it, and it's surrounded by concrete. And
Nice.
so, that's one of the nicer safe rooms I've experienced as far as being disguised.
Well, I'm sure you have plenty of references to provide for future clients, and why don't you tell people where they can get a hold of you guys?
So you can go on Google, www.homesbyfalcon.com. My cell number is a great way to start the process so you don't get off track. I have a great way of guiding the path to make sure that everything's teed up solid. And my cell number is 269-838-1819. Or you can go to brian@homesbyfalcon.com is my email. That's my preference. Contact me first. Do the lifestyle study. I start assembling the team and implementing your project.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming in. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.